Last Action Hero is an affectionate parody of the action hero, the genre of the 90s. You know, Die Hard, Commando, Red Heat, etc. Originally it was a small thriller for a fake movie called Extremely Violent before taking off, with its script reworked and starring Arnold Schwarzenegger during his zenith. Directed by John McTiernan, you know, the guy who directed small movies that nobody watched like Die Hard or The Hunt for the Red October, and with a script written by Shane Black, another unknown, who wrote Little Weapon 1 and 2 and Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. Sadly, the movie had a rough production, its marketing team didn't know how to advertise it, if it was a full-blown comedy or an action blockbuster, etc. And the head honchos made the incredibly stupid decision of launching it against Jurassic Park of all movies. Arnold himself begged them to delay the movie's launch, but his word fell into deaf ears, and even if Last Action Hero had a powerhouse trio in the writing, directing and action acting, it flopped in theaters, much to the ex-governor and his director deep sadness. It was able to recoup its losses, but far too late to not be seen as a failure and the end of the action movie genre. Last Action Hero is a movie about Danny Madigan, played by Austin O'Brien, a New York kid who is a fan of action movies, especially the Jack Slater, played by Arnold Schwarzenegger, cop action movie series. Danny leads a weird, miserable life with only his mother, who works all the time to sustain him, played by Mercedes Ruehl, while Danny is also friends with Nick, played by Robert Prosky, the projectionist of a local movie theater. Danny is not only invited by Nick to see the newest iteration of the Jack Slater movie franchise before everyone else, but given a supposedly magical movie ticket that as originally belonged to Houdini himself. Turns out, the ticket works, and Danny is launched into the action-packed one-liner spewing world of Jack Slater, with all its tropes, cliches and twists. But things won't be as fine and dandy since Tony Vivaldi, played by Anthony Quinn, and his right-hand man, Hitman Mr. Benedict, played by Charles Dance, are still the main villains of the movie, and they won't sit still as Danny intervenes. Alright, I have to admit though from the get-go and warn you that this won't be an unbiased review. I'll try my best to offer criticisms and point out problems and flaws, but Last Action Hero is one of my favorite movies of all time. Yes, this action-packed extravaganza parody sits on my shelf of favorites alongside heavy hitters like Casablanca, The Adventures of Baron Munchausen and Cyrano de Bergerac. And not as a guilty pleasure either, I really think this movie is good. This is a one-of-a-kind movie that shows up when stars align. In the visual department, right from the get-go, this movie caught me with some extreme attention to detail in every single aspect of it. Lighting, designs, scenes, pacing, shots. The directing is really efficient in building a visual narrative by piling these tiny details. For example, there is a faint but noticeable difference between scenes in the real world and scenes in the Jack Slater movie. In the movie universe, the shots are cleaner, brighter and everything is smoother and wide, whereas the real life is darker even during the day, dirtier and more cluttered. And this isn't just a matter of filters, the sets, the clothing and overall tone clash when compared, and Danny himself changes visually when he jumps between the realities. Scenarios are bright, diverse and with an interesting varied color palette as well. But when I say there is an extreme attention to detail, I'm not exaggerating. Pay attention to the eyes of the characters. You'll see tricks of the trade such as eye light, or how Ripper's eyes have contact lenses to make him more bloodshot, instead of just giving the actor some eye drops, accentuating how at the same time he's insane, dangerous, yet with that quasi-cartoonish layer. In fact, vision and eyes have a lot of focus in this movie. Zooms towards the eyes, characters speaking directly to the camera. This style of directing could be even interpreted as something more complex. For example, Benedict only has one eye and keeps changing his glass eye as the situation calls for it, which could show how his vision is crooked and he changes to fit the situation. But again, these are just possible interpretations and I may be reading a bit too much, because there's a lot of smaller details to pay attention to. Lots of blink and use miss it cameos and hidden minutiae that make this movie quite rewatchable. For example, the cops at the start of the movie are chock full of shotgun shells on their vests even if they are using rifles or submachine guns. And the mayor is played by Tina Turner. And did you notice that many of the characters' names are themed over musicians from a genre that doesn't exist in this later universe? Other than that, directing is quite good with every single technique seen in action movies being used here efficiently. Slow motions, zooms on guns, pans to show damage, helicopter cameras and so on. If I had to criticize something, it's that the last chunk of the movie feels as if the director got sloppier with some crooked angles. I don't know if it's because it happens in real life or because the stress was piling on the director and crew, but it's undeniable that overall this movie directing is really good. In the acting department, as said before, this movie has a directing that knows that this is an action movie and knows what it's doing, so the action is dynamic and efficient. Not too fast, not too slow, no shaky cams since it hadn't been invented yet, oh good times. And the quick cuts and stunts are quite efficient. Some action scenes didn't age as well as the others due to the blue screen being a bit obvious, but you see several references to other action movies, such as Hans Gruber falling from the Nakatomi Plaza and so on. Sadly, since this is a PG-13 movie, the bane of my existence, the fights were dumbed down and shortened. You won't see much blood, there aren't many firefights, and if Slater hits someone with his Desert Eagle, the goon will mostly fly backwards instead of turning into marinara. At least they make fun of the movie being PG-13. The acting is surprisingly good for what's supposed to be a simple parody of the action genre. In fact, I dare to say that this is Arnie when he tries his best to be a more serious actor. Sometimes it doesn't work, either because of the scene or because it's still Arnie, but he shows a surprising range, and in some scenes he really shines. The casting crew knew very well how to balance actors who could just chill the scenario or go straight as needed. In a nice clash between ham and serious. For example, while I know that Benedict was originally meant to be played by the late Alan Rickman, I honestly think that Charles Dance was the perfect choice. Anyone who has seen, well, anything he's in, knows that he can easily go from coldly murderous to calmly chilling the scenario in short tense bursts, and here is no exception. Here playing the perfect foil for Arnold, and their verbal duel is really good. Austin O'Brien was surprisingly good as Danny as well. It's quite hard to find child actors with a good range, and while there are some wonky bits, overall he could pull off both the joy of being inside his favorite action movie and the horror of seeing it spilling into real life. In the end, nearly every single person in this movie was chosen well and played their roles with gusto and joy, be it bombastic or simple. At most, I'd say that Mercedes Ruehl as Danny's mom was a bit weird. She looks like she's a hair away of getting completely cartoonish bonkers every single second, instead of a mom that is worried sick about her kid just bailing on her, but nothing overly detrimental. Now, in the writing aspect. So how does the writing stand out on its own, separated from all these elements? Last Action Hero is actually a fairly complex piece of media, because it needed to dig deep into an otherwise shallow genre while keeping a tenuous balance between parody and drama. Danny invades the world of Jack Slate, starts to interact with these characters, poking fun of the tropes of the trade, before the conflict is inevitably dragged back to the real world where said tropes don't apply. Guns need to be reloaded, cars don't explode if they are randomly shot, and people can be casually murdered. And it has to make clear that while both worlds are different, each one has their perks and problems. I'd say that, considering the messy production, it's a miracle we had such a good movie. It needed two climaxes, one for the movie universe and another for the real life, and actually pulled it off, albeit not unscathed due to the script being rewritten many times. While in the movieverse, scenes switch fast and sometimes jump into conclusions out of nowhere, with the viewer barely catching a break. One moment you are in the middle of a firefight and the other you are hearing Slate complain about his messed up life, and then when it switches to real life, You slowly see these characters make plans and investigate, only for things to immediately pick up a frantic pace again in an ending that feels like let's just wrap up this already. So it manages to have a rushed pace and feel slow, with such a sudden, violent tonal and pace shift when the characters switch words that I nearly got my neck broken due to whiplash. This is a rare instance of a movie of the 90s that would have benefited a lot from a longer runtime, 2 hours or even a bit more, with more time in the editing oven to let characters and ideas be more fleshed out and transition better between scenes. And this isn't even counting the fact that it made the mistake of going PG-13 and trying for mass appeal, but amazingly it's not that detrimental like other movies of the genre. Another problem is Danny himself. While Austin O'Brien did a good job as an actor, his character is quite annoying. The first part of the movie sees him ditching school to see a movie he had seen dozens of times already, he even says so, making insanely idiotic decisions for the sake of his hobby, and when he transitions into the movie world, he constantly interrupts the flow of the action in order to try to prove to Slater that he is in fact in a movie. There's absolutely no reason why he has to show everyone he is in a movie in the first place. Let's be honest for a second. If you are sucked into your favorite movie, let's say for example the Lord of the Rings trilogy, would you try to convince the hobbits that they are in a work of fiction, or just, watch the pretty sights, take the weed, eat the food before the battles? Slater acts realistically annoyed to Danny's constant nagging, which makes everything drag further, and the movie forces both together due to a trope, so it feels a tad wonky and tiresome. A nice fix could have been if Slater's life was in danger due to the movie being heralded as Slater's end. It wouldn't even need to be true, like a publicity stunt or a next movie bringing Slater back. And as a fan, Danny tried everything to save him, helping by his knowledge of the tropes and cliches, even if meant telling he is a movie character. Well, it was harsh. After this beatdown, do I still like this movie?
Yes! Yes!
Absolutely. What saved Last Action Hero and kept it as one of my favorites is the unbridled joy of being an action movie spoofing action movies and the sheer skill shown in its writing, directing and acting, even with its problems. Everything here is an affectionate parody, as in, the writers spoofed this genre because they loved it. So even when the characters are talking about how ridiculous things are, or how messed up Slater's life is due to his status as an action movie character, there isn't any bit of sarcasm or bitterness. The movie doesn't try to tell viewers that they are awful or shallow people for liking action-packed flicks. At most, it makes you ponder about a mostly unseen side of a what if. Kinda like watching how sausages are made. No, don't do that. Being a more old-style parody, this movie doesn't try to go too hard in the laughing department, and honestly, that's quite okay. If I want to laugh till I cry, I'd go back to the Naked Gun series. But here, some mad jokes like forced puns, lots of good jokes that will draw a chuckle, and some really good jokes. The writers knew that the focus was in lampshading action movies, so swerving too much into comedy could mess the balance. The characterization is also really good and well told, with every single action flick trope represented, properly parodied and never with a mean streak, but also placed in a way to synergize with each other, especially how Slate and Benedict are polar opposites. Slate is an in-your-face bombastic cop, charismatic, large and broad, who has to deal with his ever-fuming boss, although they are still friends. But unlike the dumb brute stereotype, he is also surprisingly crafty, smart, and is able to both plan ahead and improvise. On the other hand, Benedict is a cold assassin, slim, treacherous, calm, deadly, who loves his stereotypical Italian uncultured boss, but he is so perceptive that he catches on schemes and threats far faster than Slate, in a way that not even Danny can predict. Hell, even their guns are meant to express this clash. Slater uses silvery .357 Desert Eagle, while Benedict uses a black .357 Dan Wesson revolver. Even Danny, aside from his constant nagging, is still a kid. He may know the ins and outs of an action movie, but when Benedict steps into the picture, he is genuinely frightened and has to think fast. In the end, this trifecta of a love letter spoof that knows its boundaries, extreme attention to detail, and strong characterization brings us as really good scenes like the first car chase of the movie, the fight at the house, and so on. Slater's life may be miserable out of the action, but he shows great joy in gunning down baddies while AC/DC blasts in the background, and honestly, this kind of joy has been lacking in most modern movies. Another important thing to point out is that the awareness of the script also includes the fact that the action movies were in decline, and its ending is a nice send-off, a goodbye to a hero, with Slater not only willing to, but wanting to change. It's a must-watch for fans of old-style action movies. In the soundtrack... wait... AC/DC? Yup! Alice in Chains, AC/DC, Megadeth, Aerosmith, and these are just some of the bands with songs that compose this soundtrack. Banger after banger. Do I have to say more? I will anyways. It's not only well placed with the action, it's actually part of the plot, ingrained with the plot even, but that's for spoilers. Now, on the final thought, do I recommend this movie? Absolutely, especially fans of the 80s action movies. This is a one-of-a-kind, stars-aligned, really good movie that sadly was launched at the worst moment in the worst way ever. And as for spoilers, the attention to detail also reaches out to the music and soundtrack. Slater's friend, Practice, is played by Murray Abrams, to which Dennis points out that he killed Mozart, from the movie Amadeus. But when the inevitable betrayal happens, the background music changes to Symphony No. 14 in G minor by Mozart. And as much as Danny was annoying wanting to prove that Slater was in a movie, a lot of the banter is still really good, like the scene for example.
I mean, where are the ordinary, everyday women? They don't exist because this is a movie.
No, this is California.
And this scene showed that Arnie could be really smooth too. And the self-awareness banter can range from mild to really good, and this scene is forever cemented as one of the best meta jokes in modern cinema. Well, that's all for today, see you all next time, and remember to like and subscribe.